They will smile at you. They will praise you. They will call you brother, ally, partner, friend. But remember this, the man who smiles at you today may be the one who buries the blade tomorrow. In a world governed by appearances, there is no greater illusion than trust. They tell you to open up, to share, to believe in others, to give the benefit of the doubt. But this, my friend, is how you are conquered. Not by armies, not by weapons, but by misplaced confidence dressed as connection. Trust is not a virtue, it is a vulnerability. And in the hands of a cunning man, your trust becomes his tool. Niccolo Machiavelli understood the bitter truth that most refuse to see, that loyalty is fragile, that promises are weapons in disguise, and that the one who places his fate in the hands of others invites his own downfall. He who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. Understand this well. Trust is not noble, it is dangerous. Let us speak plainly. The man who trusts too easily is not kind. He is naive. He is not virtuous. He is exposed. Look around you. The ones who rise to power, do they speak often of faith in others? Do they wait for loyalty before they act? Or do they assume betrayal is inevitable and build their plans accordingly? The game of power is not won by assuming the best in people. It is won by preparing for the worst. And those who prepare for betrayal are never surprised by it. They do not stumble when allies defect. They do not weep when friends turn. They simply move forward, unshaken, untouched, unstoppable. You were taught that trust is the foundation of strong relationships. But Machiavelli would ask, strong for whom? For you or for the one waiting to strike? It is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver, he would say, and the trusted man is the easiest deceiver's prey. Consider the ruler who trusts his advisors without scrutiny. He thinks he's building a council. In truth, he's building a court of spies. Consider the entrepreneur who shares his secrets in the name of transparency. He thinks he's building a team. In truth, he's building competitors. And consider the lover who opens his heart without reserve. He thinks he's found safety. In truth, he's offered his soul without a contract. Trust is not a strategy. It is a gamble, and the odds are never in your favor. Now some will object. They will say, but trust builds unity. They will say, you cannot lead without faith in people. This is how they trap you, by appealing to your desire to be loved. But Machiavelli warned us, it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both, because fear guards your position. Love demands vulnerability, and trust is love with a blindfold. To trust is to hand over the key to your future, believing foolishly that it will be used with care. But people are not careful, they are opportunistic. They do not betray because they are evil, they betray because it benefits them. And you gave them the chance. You see, the problem is not that others are treacherous. The problem is that you believed they wouldn't be. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed who speaks most about trust? It's the ones who want something from you. The ones who ask for forgiveness, who beg for belief, who plead for second chances. Trust me, they say. But what they really mean is disarm yourself, drop your guard, let me in, let me close enough to do damage if I choose to. And once you have, they smile, because now they control the outcome. Trust gives them the lever. Silence takes it away. So how does the wise man survive? Not by isolating himself, not by hiding, but by seeing clearly, by expecting betrayal, even when kindness appears, by listening for motives beneath the words, by observing actions, not intentions, by testing loyalty before depending on it, and by never making trust the foundation of his kingdom. Instead, he builds on leverage, on information, on advantage, not emotion. He learns that people act in their self-interest, so he aligns their interests with his own. He creates dependencies. He offers incentives. He holds consequences over those who pretend to serve. And when someone claims to be loyal, he nods, but he verifies. This is not cold. This is not cruel. This is survival. This is how power is preserved, not through goodwill, but through wisdom, not by faith, but by strategy. Machiavelli taught that rulers must learn how not to be good. And what he meant is this: to lead, you must sometimes act against your own instincts. You must distrust, even when every part of you wants to believe, because the world is not made for the honest. It is made for the prepared. Ask yourself, how many times have you been betrayed by someone you thought was loyal? How many times has your openness been used against you? How many times did you look back and say, I should have known? You did know, but you ignored it. Because trust feels good, it makes you feel safe, until it doesn't. The man who sees the world as it is, not as he wishes it to be, is the man who cannot be fooled. He knows that trust is a luxury the powerful cannot afford. Because the moment you trust without caution, you give others the blueprint to destroy you. The wise do not reveal their plans. They do not speak of their next move. They do not declare allegiance until allegiance is earned, not claimed, and even then, they remain watchful. Because today's friend may be tomorrow's rival, and tomorrow's rival may be the one holding your fate in his hands. So what should you do? You observe, you test, you build slowly, you speak little, you listen always, and above all, you assume nothing. Trust is not required to lead, but clarity is. Clarity that people are complex, that loyalty shifts, that the game changes, and only those who never assume safety remain truly safe. Let them call you paranoid. Let them say you are distant, that you keep your cards too close. But remember, it is the player who keeps his hand hidden that wins the game. The one who shows his trust too soon is already outplayed. They will tell you that trust is the glue of society, that without it, civilization collapses. But Machiavelli would counter, trust is not the glue, it is the bait. And those who take the bait do not build kingdoms, they become servants in someone else's. You must begin to see trust not as an ideal, but as a currency. One that is traded, manipulated, and withdrawn, not given freely. In politics, in business, in love, trust is a negotiation, not a gift. It must be earned with blood, proven with sacrifice, and even then held with caution. Consider how the Romans handled power. Even their most esteemed generals were watched, celebrated in public, shadowed in private. Because no man is immune to ambition, and every ally is a potential usurper. Caesar trusted Brutus until he didn't, and by the time he saw clearly, it was too late. So ask yourself, who around you do you trust, and why? Because they said the right words? Because they showed a smile? Because they stood by you once before? A single act of loyalty does not purchase permanent safety. It buys temporary confidence, and confidence is the greatest weakness a powerful man can afford. Machiavelli understood that the more people know about you, the more they can predict you. And the more they can predict you, the easier you are to destroy. That is why he taught not only to distrust others, but to be unredeemable yourself. The trusted man is transparent. The dangerous man is opaque. Trusting people does not simply expose you to betrayal, it simplifies you, it reduces your complexity. It gives others a roadmap to your mind. They know how to trigger you, how to manipulate you, how to make you act against your own interest. And worst of all, they know how to time it. Your enemy doesn't strike when you're suspicious, he strikes when you're relaxed. After the laughter, after the handshake, after the shared secret, that's when you're most exposed. That's when trust costs the most. Now consider your own behavior. Do you reward those who ask for your trust, or those who prove their value? Do you find yourself speaking too soon, confiding too much, revealing what should remain hidden, all in the name of building rapport? Stop. Strategic men do not speak to be liked. They speak to control, to shape perception, to gain ground. And when speech does not serve strategy, they return to silence, because every word you say is a potential liability. Every declaration is a commitment. Every trust placed is a bet, and most of those bets fail. So how do the masters of power operate? They withhold, they delay, they speak carefully, and only after listening deeply. They trust in patterns, not promises, in outcomes, not intentions. And they never, ever trust a man just because he sounds sincere. Because sincerity is the easiest mask to wear. The deceiver trains in it. He rehearses it. And when the time is right, he uses it like a dagger, plunged beneath your ribs, while whispering, "Believe me." Machiavelli wrote, "A prince never lacks legitimate reasons to break his promise, and so do the people around you. Their needs will change, their loyalties will shift, their truths will evolve, and when they do, the man who trusted them will be the first to fall. If you are to rise, you must abandon this notion that trust is a virtue. It is not. In the court of strategy, trust is a temporary alliance, useful only so long as the interests remain aligned. The moment they diverge, trust evaporates, and the game resumes. You see, trusting people is not a personal failing. It is a structural flaw in the way most view the world. They assume others think as they do. They assume others want peace, harmony, and fairness. But Machiavelli knew better. He knew that people want advantage, they want comfort, they want to win. And when your trust stands in the way of that, they will step over it, without hesitation. This is why he taught that rulers must be both lion and fox. The lion shows strength, but the fox, The fox sees the trap before stepping in, and trust, that sweet, seductive feeling of ease, is the oldest trap of all. Let me tell you a truth that will unsettle the innocent. The most dangerous people in your life are not your enemies. It is those closest to you, those with access, those you've let near the controls, because betrayal never comes from across the field. It comes from beside you, in the moment you least expect it. And the more power you hold, the more attention you command, the more you must accept this. Everyone is watching. Some with admiration, some with envy, some with calculation. The naive believe in friendship as armor, but the Machiavellian knows friendship is often a disguise. It masks rivalry, it hides ambition, and the moment it no longer serves, it reveals its true face. You must become unshakable, and to do so, you must become untouchable, not by hiding, but by calculating, by setting boundaries, by watching reactions, by controlling what you give and what you keep. You do not need to hate, you need to see. Remember this always: the man who trusts does not control, he waits, he hopes, he prays. But the man who understands human nature, he prepares, he fortifies, he maneuvers. Do not become the story of the betrayed hero. Do not be the man who gave everything only to be ruined by those he empowered. Become the man who saw it coming and acted before the knife touched his back. In the end, you are not rewarded for being open. You are rewarded for being precise, selective, strategic. Let others share, let others believe, let others fall into the trap of goodwill. You will rise, not because you trusted, but because you saw clearly through the illusion. If you want to see a man's true nature, do not listen to his words. Watch what he does when he believes you trust him. That is when the mask slips. That is when his real character bleeds through the performance. Trust is not a bond, it is a test, and most fail it the moment they think you're not watching. You were trained to believe that suspicion is a flaw, that paranoia is a sickness, that to question others is to poison the relationship. But what if the relationship was a lie to begin with? What if your so-called alliances were built on sand, not stone? Machiavelli understood that suspicion is not weakness, it is awareness. And awareness is survival. The fox does not get eaten because it is cruel. It survives because it assumes the wolf is always hungry. Look at the structures of real power: intelligence agencies, criminal syndicates, ruling dynasties. Do they run on trust? No, they run on leverage. They run on information asymmetry. They run on contingency plans, because they know the one who believes he is safe is already compromised. You must learn to stop thinking like the people you were raised by and start thinking like the people who rule. When a politician shakes hands, he's not expressing trust, he's managing optics. When a CEO says we're a family, he's not building love, he's controlling behavior. And when a strategist praises loyalty, he's testing how far you'll go before you break. This is the truth behind every smiling face at the top. They don't trust you, and that's why they're still on top. So what does this mean for you? It means you must begin removing emotion from your evaluations. The man who makes decisions based on feelings is always prey to the one who makes them based on outcomes. You must assess behavior, not declarations. You must track consistency, not intensity. And when someone fails even once in a matter of principle, do not give a second chance, because what they did once, they are capable of again. Forgiveness is for personal peace, but in the game of power, repetition is permission. Understand this well: trust is not built over time, it is broken in a moment, and once it is broken, it must not be rebuilt, it must be restructured, with consequences, with boundaries, with reduced access, or not at all. The man who burns you once, expecting to return as if nothing happened, is not just dangerous, he is contemptuous. He sees your mercy as weakness, he sees your compassion as leverage, and the next time he won't hesitate, because he knows you won't either. Machiavelli warned against this softness of heart. A prince must not be deterred from doing what is morally questionable, if it preserves his power. What does this mean for you? That there are times when cutting someone off, without explanation, is not cruelty, it is necessity. That staying silent in the face of betrayal is not passive, it is preparation. That giving someone a second chance is not noble, it is strategic suicide. You are not obligated to explain why your walls have gone up. The moment you sensed a crack in their loyalty, your duty was to fortify, not to justify. Let them wonder why you changed. Let them guess, because the more uncertain they are about your boundaries, the less likely they are to test them again. Now consider the modern world. It worships openness. It demands vulnerability. Social media tells you to share everything, to tell the world your thoughts, your feelings, your mistakes. But the more you share, the more you become predictable. And the predictable man is the controllable man. Machiavelli would see this culture as a perfect hunting ground, a place where people hand over their secrets, hoping for connection, and in doing so, they make themselves targets, they make themselves weak. He would ask, why are you revealing the very things that could be used against you? Stop giving people the ammunition, let them work harder to understand you, let your presence be felt, not dissected. Let your moves be silent, not live-streamed, because the man who cannot be read cannot be stopped. Let's turn now to influence. In every domain of power, trust is not a requirement, it is a lever, and levers are used, not worshipped. The Machiavellian mind does not seek trust, it inspires fear, respect, calculated admiration. Why? Because these are harder to fake. Trust can be mimicked, fear must be earned, respect must be maintained, and admiration, when mixed with mystery, becomes loyalty without illusion. This is why the greatest leaders are not the most transparent, they are the most disciplined. They know when to speak, when to reveal, when to withhold. They know that silence is not absence, it is dominance, that vagueness is not weakness, it is protection, and that control is not granted, it is taken through restraint. You must become the same. Begin with small things. Stop explaining your schedule. Stop justifying your choices. Stop announcing your goals. Say less in meetings. Listen more in negotiations. Watch how people act when they don't know what you're thinking. Their behavior will tell you everything. And when someone asks, why don't you trust me? Understand that this is not a question, it is a pressure tactic, a ploy to make you feel guilt for doing the smart thing. Do not respond, let your silence answer for you. Because the man who demands your trust has already failed the test. The moment you stop caring about being understood, you become powerful. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you become free. And the moment you stop trusting people just because they want you to, you become dangerous. Machiavelli once wrote that men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, covetous. This is not bitterness, this is realism. And the realist does not expect loyalty, he secures it. He does not expect honesty, he verifies it. And he does not expect safety, he engineers it. This is how you must live, as if every word you say could be recorded, as if every alliance could be severed, as if every handshake hides a knife, not because you're paranoid, but because you're prepared. You must begin replacing your default response of trust with one of analysis. Who benefits from this? What do they gain if I believe them? What happens if they change their mind? Ask these questions, not once, but always. The man who walks into every room assuming no one is for him, that is the man who cannot be ambushed. That is the man who lasts. You must understand this now. Trust is not just a doorway, it is a timeline, a countdown. The moment you trust someone, the clock begins. At first, everything is smooth, safe, cooperative. But eventually, the conditions will shift, incentives will change. And when the reward for betraying you outweighs the benefit of loyalty, the decision has already been made. You just don't know it yet. This is not cynicism, this is geometry. Pressure will always test the strength of a structure, and people, like walls, are rarely built to last. Machiavelli wrote that a wise prince must assume that people will always act out of self-interest. Not sometimes, always. This assumption is not cold, it is freeing. Because once you stop expecting loyalty to be permanent, you stop being surprised when it disappears. Let's look at how this plays out in negotiation. The amateur thinks trust helps the deal, that it brings the parties closer. But the Machiavellian understands. The more trust that's declared, the more hidden leverage is at play. When someone says you can trust me, what they really mean is don't look too closely. And while you're blinded by their tone, they're redrawing the battlefield beneath your feet. True power in negotiation does not come from trust. It comes from information, from silence, from positioning. The side that reveals less wins more. The side that speaks less commands more. Because silence is not empty, it's strategic space. And the man who can sit in it without flinching is the man who makes others flinch first. Consider how this works in leadership. A trusted leader must always be transparent, accessible, relatable. But each of those traits is a point of exposure. The more accessible you are, the more people believe they know your next move. The more transparent you are, the easier you are to manipulate. And the more relatable you become, the harder it is to command distance, and therefore authority. That is why the great leaders of history rarely gave full access to their minds. They offered conclusions, not debates. vision, not confession. They understood the balance between connection and mystique, between leading and revealing. And this mystique, it is not created by charisma alone, it is created by restraint. The restraint to leave things unsaid, the restraint to remain unreadable, the restraint to say no when others demand trust as a condition of peace. Look closely at every betrayal in your life. Trace it back. The wound was not just caused by the act, it was made possible by your trust. You gave them the blade, you taught them where to strike, you held your arms open and they walked through smiling, and yet you blamed them, when in truth, the original error was yours. This is the hardest truth to accept, that you were not attacked by accident. You were attacked because you were visible, predictable, trusting, and once that trust was mapped, they had a blueprint. So how do you protect yourself? You reverse the process. You become unreadable. You become difficult to map. You become a mystery inside a fortress, not through isolation, but through precision. Every word calibrated, every relationship managed, every piece of information controlled. That doesn't mean you operate with hostility. It means you operate with intention. You don't reveal, you unveil, on your time, on your terms. And when you are asked to trust, you smile, but you verify. You agree, but you test. You partner, but you remain 2 steps removed. Always with one eye on the exit. Always with one contingency in play. Because in the game of power, survival is not about who trusts most, it's about who prepares best. Let's talk about friendships. Yes, even friendships, especially friendships. Machiavelli would say that no bond is above politics. That every relationship, no matter how close, exists within a frame of shifting power. You may love your friend, you may laugh with them, but the moment their interests move away from yours, you are no longer aligned. You are a threat, or a tool, or simply an obstacle. And if you think that's too harsh, ask yourself, how many friendships have ended quietly? Not with a dramatic betrayal, but with silence, distance, erosion. Why? Because the benefit of closeness disappeared, and trust, without benefit, dissolves. That is the nature of the world. Utility sustains trust, not affection, not history, not memory. And the moment you forget that, you give others the power to reset the terms without warning. So what should you do? Stop treating trust as sacred. Start treating it as temporary, as conditional, as revocable. Watch how people behave when they know they're being watched, and how they shift when they think you're no longer paying attention. That is the test, and most will fail it. You are not a villain for doing this. You are not cold. You are correct. Because trust is not a gesture of kindness, it is a contract. And contracts have clauses, protections, escape routes. Build them into every alliance, every deal, every promise. Now look at your own life, your projects, your ambitions, your inner circle. Who have you trusted with access they did not earn? Who have you assumed would stay loyal because of shared history? Who have you allowed close without mechanisms to distance them if needed? Audit it all, ruthlessly, because the higher you climb, the more costly trust becomes, and the man who reaches high places while still trusting like a child, he will not stay there long. He will be replaced by someone who saw what he chose to ignore. Machiavelli wrote, "Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony." What does that mean? That when resources, opportunity, or advantage are at stake, even the deepest emotions are pushed aside. Love fades, money motivates, and those who you trusted most will be the ones to justify your fall. They will say it was necessary, that it was complicated, that you changed, but the truth is simpler. You gave them the chance, and they took it. So from this point forward, remember, you are not obligated to trust. You are obligated to see, to watch, to think. And in every room, in every deal, in every alliance, ask yourself, if the conditions change tomorrow, would this person still choose me, or would they choose themselves? If the answer is the latter, then act accordingly, because the man who is feared, respected, and rarely understood is the one who rises through the storm, not the one who trusted the weather to stay calm. They will say you're too guarded, too calculating, too distant, but what they really mean is this: you cannot be controlled, you cannot be read, you cannot be predicted. And in a world where most people trade in emotional currency, your refusal to trust freely makes you immune to their economy. This is why power respects silence more than speech, why it respects skepticism more than faith, because trust makes you emotionally available, and emotional availability is leverage for the manipulator. Machiavelli knew that if you want to keep your crown, you must keep your hand close to your chest. Even your allies should wonder where your loyalty truly lies, not because you are treacherous, but because you are sovereign. To trust is to believe that others will act in your interest even when it is not in theirs. That's the core fallacy. Loyalty that is not incentivized is loyalty that is borrowed, and anything borrowed must eventually be returned. The powerful understand this. They don't demand trust. They construct structures where betrayal becomes too costly, where defection carries punishment, where silence isn't passive, it's the threat of knowledge you haven't revealed yet. Let's break this down practically. In business, you don't trust your partners, you design contracts. You don't trust your team blindly, you build systems of accountability. You don't assume loyalty, you create incentive structures where loyalty is profitable. In relationships, you don't trust someone just because they say the right words. You test their consistency, you set boundaries, you measure how they act when you're no longer useful. And when you withdraw affection, or benefits, or proximity, do they still respect the bond, or do they shift? Machiavelli would remind you, man is loyal only while it serves him. Men are less hesitant about offending someone who makes himself loved than someone who makes himself feared. Why? Because fear has consequence, love has expectation, and expectations are often ignored. So your job is not to be lovable, it is to be consequential. This brings us to a deeper principle. Never trust someone who has nothing to lose by betraying you, because betrayal is often a calculation, not a betrayal of values. It's not about emotion, it's about what they gain. And if they gain more by cutting ties than by keeping them, your trust was never a shield, it was an invitation. Start analyzing relationships through this filter. Does this person have skin in the game? Would betrayal cost them anything real? Or are you the only one at risk? Because if you are the only one exposed, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a negotiation. You've already lost. Even your most sacred connections, family, mentors, longtime friends, must be re-evaluated through this lens. Trust is not static. It is shaped by context, time, circumstance. And those who were loyal yesterday may become liabilities tomorrow, not because they changed, but because the environment did. A financial strain, a better offer, a new opportunity. That's all it takes. The man who was once your ally can become your rival. And the deeper your trust, the easier the betrayal. People think betrayal hurts most when it comes from someone close. But Machiavelli would argue, it only hurts because you refuse to see the possibility. The wise man never feels betrayal because he never ruled it out. Let's look at history. Julius Caesar didn't fear enemies, he feared Brutus. Why? Because Brutus had access, Brutus had trust, and that is why Brutus had power. It was Caesar's trust, not Brutus's ambition, that became the fatal flaw. Even Christ was betrayed not by strangers, but by one of his own. Judas didn't come from outside the circle, he came from within. And you still believe your circle is safe. The higher your value, the more tempting you become. Your resources, your influence, your silence. These are assets, and assets are tempting to anyone who thinks they can convert them into personal gain. This is why the most successful individuals in power keep rotating their inner circle. They don't allow comfort to grow unchecked. They don't allow bonds to form without re-evaluation, because comfort breeds assumption, and assumption leads to negligence. You must audit your relationships the way a king audits his fortress. Check the gates, test the guards, replace the weak, remove the uncertain, and do it often, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Machiavelli would call this maintenance of power, not paranoia, not fear, maintenance. Because power once achieved is not sustained by trust, it is sustained by systems, by fear, by admiration, by calculated mystery. Now consider how to project this. If you do not wish to be betrayed, you must learn to look unbetrayable. This begins with how you present yourself. The man who appears desperate for loyalty is the one most likely to be abandoned. But the man who appears unshaken by loss, unaffected by silence, and undisturbed by separation, that man radiates danger, not because he is cruel, but because he does not need you, and people do not cross those who do not fear being left. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved. He didn't mean brutal, he meant self-contained. He meant unpredictable, he meant sovereign. When people fear losing your favor, they obey. When they love you without consequence, they test. Let your relationships be balanced on tension, not dependence. Let your influence be quiet but sharp. Let your boundaries be invisible but unforgiving. And let your image suggest that betrayal is not met with sadness, but with removal. Swift, clean, silent. Because the man who stays silent when others speak too soon, who smiles when others react, who distances himself without announcement, that man becomes mythic. He is not questioned. He is not played. He is not hurt. He is observed. And eventually, he is obeyed. The most powerful person in the room is not the one who talks the most. It is the one whose trust you never quite feel you've earned. the one who listens more than he reveals, the one who withholds, not out of fear, but out of mastery. This is your new standard. Never become the man who needs to trust. Become the man whose restraint makes others want to earn it. Because once they are chasing your approval, you are no longer playing defense. You are in command. There comes a point when you stop asking, "Who can I trust?" and begin asking, "Who benefits if I fall?" That shift is the beginning of power. Not the illusion of safety, not the comfort of belonging, but power, cold, quiet, lasting. You've heard the phrase, "Trust is earned," but even that is too generous. Trust is leveraged, engineered, made costly to violate. The Machiavellian does not wait for signs of loyalty. He constructs an environment where betrayal comes at a price too high to pay. And yet the world still romanticizes trust, still peddles the myth that vulnerability breeds connection. But ask yourself this, do the most powerful men in history lead by vulnerability? Do they bare their soul and hope others handle it gently? Or do they speak selectively, act precisely, and hold their cards until the moment they strike? Vulnerability is currency in a world ruled by comfort, but in a world ruled by ambition, it is bait. You do not need to be cruel, but you do need to be unreadable. You do not need to lie, but you must never hand others the full map of your intentions, because once they see the whole picture, they can paint their own victory with your ruin as the background. Machiavelli wrote, "A prudent man should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who have been supreme, and who were these supreme men. Not the ones who trusted easily, not the ones who believed in declarations of loyalty, but the ones who anticipated the betrayal and turned it into strategy. Let them underestimate you. Let them believe you are cold, distant, even ruthless. Because the man who does not explain himself, who does not announce his plans, who does not expose his fears, that man becomes a force of nature, not a person to be understood, but a presence to be reckoned with." And this is the great irony. While the world chases approval, connection, and validation, the ones who rise are the ones who learn to live without them, who find power in solitude, focus in silence, strength in self-containment. Trust is seductive because it feels good. It's human to want to believe in others. But Machiavelli's greatest gift was reminding us that feelings, left unchecked, are tools for the ambitious. If your desire for trust outpaces your demand for proof, you will fall. So here is your final lesson. The man who trusts people is always reacting, always hoping, always adjusting to the shifting winds of others' promises. But the man who trusts systems, leverage, and foresight, he commands the weather itself. Set traps, not expectations. Cultivate alliances, not dependencies. And speak in strategies, not confessions. When others beg for trust, respond with boundaries. When they plead for belief, offer time. When they show loyalty, offer opportunity, but never without surveillance. Your greatness will not be determined by how deeply you can love or trust, but by how calmly you can stand alone, by how well you operate without leaning, and by how quietly you move while others advertise their every move. Because the quiet man is underestimated, and the underestimated man is the most dangerous one in the room. There is a power that comes from being unreadable, a strength that flows from silence, a sharpness that only grows in the absence of emotional noise. That is your edge, that is your weapon, and as you rise, as they start watching, admiring, even envying, you must remember one final truth. You are not betrayed by people, you are betrayed by your belief that they wouldn't. So let them smile, let them promise, let them swear loyalty and beg for your trust. And you will nod, you will listen, but you will never forget. The moment you trust fully is the moment you give them the blade. Let others build empires of openness, of transparency, of trust. You will build yours in silence. You will let your actions speak so loud they drown out the noise of every oath. You will protect your power, not with walls, but with unreadability, not with faith, but with foresight, not with hope, but with cold, steady vision. Because in the end, Machiavelli was right. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. And in a world where everyone begs to be loved, the man who walks alone is the one they fear the most. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you already understands. Safety is an illusion, that to move differently in this world, you must see differently, and that trusting blindly is the first step to losing yourself. Somewhere along the way, you started realizing that being accepted means nothing if it costs you your discernment. That power begins, not when others believe in you, but when you stop needing them to. Now tell me, are you ready to be doubted, resented, even feared, in the name of your clarity? Are you ready to walk alone if it means walking with your eyes open? If this message struck something in you, if it echoed truths you felt but never said, write in the comments, "I choose to see clearly." Let's see how many here are ready to abandon illusion and build something unshakable on silence, strategy, and truth. And don't stop here. Watch the next video. You need it, more than you realize. I'll see you there.